So after 21 days, this very controversial constitutional instrument that empowers the Electoral Commission to compile a new voters register is in force. The Electoral Commission from tomorrow has the power, has the legal backing to go ahead and compile a new voters register. At this point, we are at the point of no return. But the key question to ask tonight is it a recipe for chaos or a cure for a defective register? Let's go through how we got here, which is a subject to some great controversy today in the floor. Parliament voted by 102 as against 96 decision to give the green light to the Electoral Commission constitutional instrument. Now, this number is important because it shows you that the NPP majority showed up in force and they voted for this. So the vote really happened along party lines, which was expected, because previously last week at the subsidiary legislation committee level, this is exactly what panned out, where 12 people voted to approve, to recommend an approval. 9 people from the opposition and NDC voted to reject it, which again has reflected on the floor. MPs voting on party lines, 102 as against 96. So again, as I indicated, the green light has been given to the Electoral Commission to proceed with the compilation of the voters register. But that was not without allegations and counter allegations from both minority and majority sides. Let's go to how it panned out today. And the Subsidiary Legislation Committee is one of the few committees in Parliament, but together with the Public Accounts Committee, which is chaired by the opposition member of Parliament. So it is chaired by Dominic Ayine, who is an NDC member of Parliament. Now, Yabamia Sama, who is the MP for Adentan, is the ranking member on that committee. The minority accused him for the Subsidiary Legislation Committee, Yabamia Sama, of cancelling out portions of the earlier report, an allegation that started circulating sometime last week and it didn't stop. Today, when it came to the plenary, he was accused of taking out portions of the original report. We also saw further minority allegations. They say that the new CI will spell doom for the country. Why specifically are they saying that? Because it will disenfranchise a lot of Ghanaians. This is the minority position, and they argue this forcefully today on the floor of Parliament. Now, again, Yabamia Samoa has denied claims of cancelling out portions of the earlier report. He's going to be part of my guest tonight. We're going to put that to him, and we're going to get some clarity on these allegations against him. The majority is accusing the NDC of being anti-progress, because as far as they're concerned, this is the only way to guarantee a credible, free and fair elections on December 7th. And they see the NDC blocking the path to that. The question to ask tonight, now that we've gone past the CI maturing and the Electoral Commission getting the go-ahead and the legal backing to do this, it's past debate now whether we should compile a voters register or not. That debate is gone, it's dead. Until somebody takes this matter up in court, it is done. The EC will go ahead and compile it. We've gone past it. The question to ask is whether this CI, that spells out exactly how the new voters register should be compiled, and controversially, which documents you need to get onto the new register. Whether this particular CI is a recipe for chaos, as the minority is arguing, or it's a cure for a defective register, as the majority side has been positing for quite some time now. That is the conversation we're going to have tonight. You want to stay with me, because this has a lot to do with our democracy. This CI is possibly the single most important constitutional instrument this year that may govern an election and our democracy. Some have said it could tear us apart. Others have said it is the means to uniting us. And so a lot of time has to be devoted to this. Stay with me after the break. The people who saw it all, wrote it all, and won and lost are my guests on the show tonight after the break. So joining me via Zoom tonight, Yab Babia Samwa is the ranking member on the Subsidiary Legislation Committee. Also joining me is the chairman of that same committee, former Deputy Attorney General, Dr. Dominic Kayine. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time here on PM Express. Mr. Babia Samwa, let me ask you, so now it has passed, it's matured, it's now effective law. What happens now?
What happens?
Yes, what happens now?
The EC gets his enabling legislation to determine the source documents for its registration. That's what happens.
So,
unless I misunderstand the question.
No, I mean that's exactly my question. So clearly, now the EC has the legal mandate, the power, the authority to go ahead and compile the new voters register and determine, of course, based on the CIS dictates, reject some documents, but accept others in identifying us as Ghanaians and a prerequisite to get onto the new voters register?
Maybe we should separate what happened today from the maturity date for the CI files. The dating and the timing validity of the CI runs concurrently with the reporting. We as a COP had to deliver a report about our views on the CI, but time on the CI didn't stop running. So it just so happens that the CI matures today after 21 sitting days. And the high drama is that our committee report was also debated today, but could have been debated last week, but for certain matters that ended up making me the more, is it notorious or infamous?
Yeah, infamous.
Not have been the case.
Infamous.
More or less. Yes, but what happened in Parliament today is not the reason why the CI has become law. The CI is law today because it run its mandatory 21 days under the Constitution, Article 11.7. From tomorrow, it will become the basis for the portion of the EC's mandate, which demands the kind of document they require to identify you to register.
Okay.
Today's work was simply with our report about our views on the CI. And if altogether we had been able to convince the House, the plenary of the House, that we did not believe the CI ought to pass, then we could have roused 2/3 of the House to vote against it. That is the only way in which we could have stopped it today. And that didn't happen.
Dr. Ayine, so this was always going to be the outcome. I'm pretty sure you knew this. It happened now. Case closed, as you know. This is fait accompli.
Well, I mean, you can say it's a fait accompli because the constitutional basis for the CI has been met. In other words, the maturity of the CI will take place actually 1 minute past midnight tonight. As we speak now, no step of a legal nature can be taken pursuant to the CI because it has to mature after 21 days. So 1 minute past 12 midnight, tonight, or let's say tomorrow morning, it becomes law. And as you have said, the Electoral Commission can then go ahead and then conduct its registration exercises, its future registration exercises, in accordance with the law as stipulated now in CI 91 as amended by CI 126. Because Evans, as you very well know, or might have heard in the, as you follow the course of the debate, there is already a CI in force, and that is CI 91. Now, CI 91 stipulated in Regulation 1, okay, the criteria for determining the citizenship of a person for purposes of registration. And you could at the point of registration present either your your current voter ID card, or if you had one, okay, or you could present a passport, if you had one, all right, or a national ID if you had one, or if you did not have any of the above, then you could have two people, persons guarantee for you, all right, by vouching that you are a Ghanaian citizen, in accordance with the laws of, in accordance with the Constitution and laws of Ghana. And so what this CI has done is basically to take out the current voter's ID card and then the driver's license as proof of identification for purposes of registration. And that was his, intendment, and that is what has been achieved by the laying in Parliament and the 21 days passage.
Why I watched the debate today, and for those who didn't watch it, why was the minority side so opposed to the CI?
Well, Evans, we are opposed to it on a number of grounds, and I'm sure as you watch the debate, speaker after speaker on our side made it abundantly clear the reasons why we are against the CI. First of all, Evans, the law on eligibility, okay, starts with the Constitution. All right. Article 42 of the Constitution is very clear that in order for you to be registered to vote, you must be a Ghanaian citizen of 18 years of age and of a sound mind. Okay. Of course, it will be difficult to say that for the third criterion that we all go and get psychiatric evaluations and bring the reports in order to determine that we are of sound minds. But over the years, beginning with 1992, the Electoral Commission has always promulgated CIs, that's constitutional instruments, pursuant to its power under Article 51 of the Constitution, in order to regulate the conduct of elections, including the registration for purposes of elections, right? And it started with CI 12. And under CI 12, the Electoral Commission basically, repeated the constitutional requirements under Article 42. It was much later in CI 72 that we started the process of, putting the identification documents that you need in order to be able to register, okay? And then those were repeated in CI 91. Now, that was the point at which Abu Ramadan and Evans Nimako, together with Danso Achempo, went to the Supreme Court to say that, okay, one, the use of the existing voter ID card under CI 72, all right, for purposes of registration will result in double registration. And therefore, the Supreme Court was being called upon by the plaintiffs in those cases, all right, to declare as unconstitutional the use of the existing voter ID card under CI 72. Okay, they also contended that the use of the national health insurance card for registration was unconstitutional because that card did not distinguish between Ghanaian citizens and foreigners. And because the key criterion for registration is Ghanaian citizenship, their contention was that that card would have led to resulted in a situation where foreigners will be on the register, right? So they asked the Supreme Court, first to declare the use of these cards unconstitutional. That included the voter ID card. Then also they asked the court to declare the resultant register unconstitutional. And therefore, to just throw it out altogether so that we have a fresh register. Now, remember that these were the arguments of the plaintiffs in Abu Ramadan. All right. The Supreme Court agreed with them with respect to the National Health Insurance card and declared that one unconstitutional. With respect to the voter ID card, the Supreme Court said no. The reason, the voter ID card, cannot be thrown away as an unconstitutional document is because it is is prima facie the best evidence of a person's citizenship, and therefore, subject to meeting all the orders that the Supreme Court was subsequently going to make. That is, cleaning the register of those who had registered with the National Health Insurance card, and of dead people and minors and so on. All right, the voter ID card would stay, and therefore could be used as a source document for registration purposes. All right. So then the issue about the credibility of the register, the court said because of the admitted presence of persons who had used the National Health Insurance card to register on the register, all right, the register was not reasonably credible. All right, Evans, listen, It wasn't reasonably credible, but it was not, unconstitutional. Because remember that the register is itself a legal document. It is often more or less a schedule to the CI that, mandates the registration. And so after the registration, currently under Regulation 27, there is a procedure for certification of the register. And so when the register is certified, it forms, an integral part of the constitutional instrument that brings it into existence. And so the court said the register will not be thrown away as unconstitutional. All right. Now, there is something that maybe at this point in time, I think Ghanaians need to know. All right. The current secretary to the president, my good friend Nana Bedi Otuba Asante, was the lawyer for Abu Ramadan. All right. And he made all these arguments, in the Supreme Court, and was partially successful in getting the Supreme Court to order that the National Health Insurance card registrants should be struck off the register. And even the Electoral Commission went back to the Supreme Court with 56,000 names that they had identified as having used the National Health Insurance card as a source document. And so they told the Supreme Court that these are the names that we have identified, and we have deleted them. All right. Now, remember that the Electoral Commission is a constitutional institution. It doesn't matter if it was at the time, manned or managed by a chairperson and a number of commissioners who are no longer at the place. The institution owns whatever was told the Supreme Court. And so it is, a very curious development that the lawyers for Abu Ramadan are now in control of the levers of government, and all of a sudden, the EC, the Electoral Commission, is speaking the language of Abu Ramadan. In fact, if you listen to the arguments, today, and the justifications being given by the Electoral Commission, they are not different from those that were given by the Abu Ramadan plaintiffs before the Supreme Court. Now, is that a coincidence?
That is
right.
Well, let me. This is probably. This is a matter of fact, and we all know it. Yeah.
All right. So our point is that what these steps that have been taken, quite apart from the fact that there is this I don't want to call it unnatural coincidence between the ideas of the MPP and those of the independent constitutional body. All right. We think that it is going to disenfranchise a lot of people. Okay. Because if I start to think of it, how many Ghanaians have a passport? How many Ghanaians have the National Identification Authority, the Ghana card? Okay. To be able to present them for purposes of registration. And so you go to the rural areas, such as my constituency, and if there is nobody to guarantee for you, okay, it doesn't matter that you were born in this country. It doesn't matter that your parents and grandparents are Ghanaians. Evans, your right to vote will be out of the...
Hold it for me. Yababian Sama, isn't that a fundamental point that both parties can rally around? The fact that people will be disenfranchised, and that could affect MPP, could affect NDC as well.
Sincerely, it's not fair up to the point where my chairman of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee mentioned Nana Bediatu. I think he was making very good ground. But at the point where he begins to cast certain insinuations and link Nana Bediatu's arguments in the Supreme Court to his current position, and that position gives him a certain leverage in terms of the EC's decision-making, I believe is seriously unfair. First of all, those decisions in the Supreme Court were made on the strength of the arguments at the time. They were made on the strength of the arguments at the time. And there were two strands of the argument, as he's pointed out. The NHIA card was declared unconstitutional. But if the voter ID card then was affirmed, the fact was also made that it is linked to the NHIA card because those who had acquired the voter ID card through the NHIA card had to be cleared from the register. Now, where we differ is whether or not the 56,000 was a sufficient cleaning process.
You think it's not?
I don't think we can agree on that.
You think it's not sufficient?
It is not. For many in this country, it is disputed whether or not that 56,000 was a real exercise and a genuine effort. For those who would choose to literally interpret the situation now, they will insist that the 56,000 was the end of the matter because that is what the EC filed. But the EC insists, and there are people out there who are also professing that they used the NHIA card and they were never cleaned from the register. They were never cleaned from the register. So it means that there was a certain defectiveness about the process of cleaning the register. It was not satisfactorily done. And to the extent that the EC is unable to determine and have a mechanism for continuous cleaning of the register, then we can say the way it's being speculated now that those arguments are what are influencing the EC, we can also say very strong inference that there are many people out there holding voter ID cards, which on the face of it, from the ruling, ought to be genuine and ought to be the prima facie evidence of your citizenship, but cannot be because we can't tell whether or not they were acquired through NHIA or other source documents. And therefore, we need to be careful in concluding that the 56,000 was the be-all and the end-all of this matter. It cannot be the case. In any event, the New Patriotic Party has always insisted since 2012 that we wanted a new register. Parts of the processes in court in the Abu Ramadan series of cases buttressed that point. It wasn't until 2016 that there was an attempt to clean the register before the election, which I'm saying now that wasn't satisfactorily done. If that continued Electoral Commission, the same identity, the Electoral Commission, the same identity today, determines that it is going ahead to do a brand new register in order to assure itself that it has finally rid the register of the contaminated ID cards. Then we, the New Party, support that process without any reservation at all. We do not believe it's a question of influence or otherwise. It is something that the Electoral Commission has sought to do, has intended to do, and it's time that it does it.
So what would you say to Nagine? Is it by sheer coincidence that what you want somehow perfectly coincides with what this current crop of EC officials want? Pure coincidence?
I don't think so, because if you recollect, between 2016 and 2017, there was this assumption that something had to be done about the register. And yet, the best option then at that time that the EC preferred was cleaning. Now, if the cleaning hasn't gone well, what is so difficult about creating a new register?
But it hasn't gone well
franchising people.
According to the MPP. It hasn't gone well according to the MPP.
That's the point I'm making. That's the sticking point. That those who want to literally interpret the situation will insist that the EC brought 56,000 names and that's final. Those who want to liberally look at it, the practical reality, you can find human beings now who will step forward and attest to it that they use NHIE cards and were never cleaned. They are still holding their cards.
Do you
have a serious?
To the substantive matter of, don't you agree though, Mr. Bamiasama, knowing the kind of country we live in, the majority, many Ghanaians will not have a passport and definitely will not have a Ghana card, and many of these people will be disenfranchised. You don't agree with that?
No, I don't agree at all. That's where I was coming to. Because let's look at the practical realities. We live in a country where we have to be pragmatic about some of the things we do. Pragmatically, the NIA tells Ghana that it has registered in excess of 11 million people. Out of the 11 million registered, it has about 3 million cards it has to distribute. If it is able to distribute those 11 million cards, 3 million cards, and it comes out at the end of the day that it has distributed 11 million cards, then it means over 3/4 of a potential register has already been achieved in terms of ID source documents from individuals who would seek to go there. Assuming, without admitting that you don't have too much in terms of passports, there is a third mechanism, which is 2 people who have acquired their new cards vouching for 10 others. Those 10 others, in terms of 222, vouching for 10 other people. Now, vouching has been part of our electoral identification process for all this while. So many years, you have people who swear an oath and vouch that I know so and so. Even with the Ghana card, it's done as well. So it's not immutable that there's a certain specific type of identification that one has to have before one is disenfranchised, i.e. the old voter ID.
But isn't that a tremendous amount of trust you are putting in one person to vouch for 10 people? That you're hoping that he will tell the truth? Before, they could vouch for 5 people. But this is the first time they're doing 10.
It's still a matter of trust. And in vouching for 5 people, the Electoral Commission told us in committee, and it's in the report that we presented at the plenary, that in the last limited registration exercise, where over 1 million people were registered, over 95% of the people who were registered came through the route of vouching. And therefore, being vouched for is an acceptable practice. It's legal. It's not just a practice. It's legal. It's provided for in the CIs that have been used so far. It's acceptable. So there is nothing wrong where you have increased vouching by 100%, where previously people could vouch, 2 people could vouch for only 5. Now 2 people can vouch for 10. And that makes up for any gap that will come in by way of people not having passports or by way of people not having their national ID cards in time. But clearly, if you're looking at targeting a register of 14 to 15 million people, and you can distribute 11 million Ghana cards before active registration, and you have vouching, then there is no way that anybody is going to be disenfranchised. And let's not assume that Ghana is so rural that rural people don't know their rights. They've been through these exercises before. We had a register in 95. We had a register in 2004. We had a biometric register in 2012. And we are going to have another biometric register. This is not new to the people of Ghana. Let's not begin to think that a rural person is so rural that they don't know what is happening. They do know where it's.
Final question, Mr. Bamiasama. Between now and the end of June, when the EC has scheduled to start the registration, you seriously believe that the National Identification Authority is in a position to do that significant mop-up of the 3 million outstanding cards, and then the extra that they haven't done so far that they are promising they will do within a COVID-19 environment? Is that a realistic expectation to have?
I don't think that they will go through all those processes. But I believe that if they are able to distribute the cards they have in possession, it will go a long way to reduce the identity.
But that is a big if.
Because 11 million, is it?
It's a big if.
What was that?
I'm saying that is a big if.
How big an if is it? These are cards that have already been printed. It's not a big if. It's not. I don't believe that the mop-up is very vital because there are other means, including vouching and passport. But I believe that.
Mr. Forgive me. We just have a challenge. We have a challenge with your talk back to us. There's a slight feedback in the line. I'm going to take a quick break. When I return, so what next for the NDC and the minority, as they've been consistently opposed to this? Now that the thing has passed, have they thrown in the towel as well? Stay with us. You're so live with me here on PM Express, discussing one of the biggest points of controversy dividing this country right in the middle, and threatening our democracy, many would say. So where do we go from here? Dr. Dominic Iyine, so you've lost this in Parliament. The Electoral Commission has the right to go ahead. Yababia Sama has articulated why they were opposed to this. They have faith that the NIA will mop up adequately and distribute the cards. Assuming that that is true, doesn't that address your concern of disenfranchisement? Because people will get the card. I mean, that is, as I indicated, it's a big if, but it's still possible, right? Have you considered that option? That if that option is on the table and the NIA, which still remains to be seen between now and the end of June, is truly able to distribute the 3 million cards left and mop up the rest of the country, that clearly addresses that concern of yours that you have.
Yeah, thank you very much, Evans. But the first thing I want to say in response to your question is that nobody governs a country based upon assumptions. Countries are governed based upon empirical evidence of what is achievable. As we speak now, the NIA is, having a knee-jerk, reaction to the public calls with respect to the limited distribution of its cards. All right, and even if you know the processes involved in the distribution of those cards, you would probably agree with me that they are, are going to attempt the impossible before the registration starts, if at all, on June 30th. And I'm saying this because, you see, those cards are not handed out, as if you are handing out parcels of food, all right? Those cards are handed out through a process of verification, where the machines that, machines that contain the data will have to verify the person before the registration officer, so that the card is then handed out to you, so that they know that this is Evans who has, who was the one who registered, and the biometrics of maybe your fingers and your iris or your face will be taken to confirm. So it is not just a question of going to, let's say, the district assembly and dumping the cards there, and Evans walks there and says, my name is Evans Mensah, and then they check through and say, okay, here's your card, take it and go away. All right, so it is a whole cumbersome bureaucratic process that they have to go through. All right. So making the assumption that maybe that will happen, and if it happens, then it will solve the problem that we are raising. It's not, let me say, an adequate answer to all the queries that we have raised regarding this, entire process. And again, the Honorable Asamoah talked about anecdotal evidence on the streets. People say they had registered with voter ID cards, with national health insurance cards, and they are still having their voter ID cards. All right. The sad thing about this whole process is the fact that even before the Supreme Court, when the allegations are made, no proof is provided. All right. In other words, if you are the one alleging that some people have used national health insurance card, to register, you need to provide the proof.
Are you doubting that there are people? Are you doubting that there aren't people out there who are still on the register, who registered and got on there with NIA cards, NHIS card? Are you doubting that?
I doubt that. I doubt that is true.
You seriously? Are you saying that 11 million Ghanaians, you can't find one person tonight, who is still on the register with a national health insurance card?
Well, Evans, I'm saying that I doubt that because the Electoral Commission was ordered to clean the register. They went back to the Supreme Court under oath and said they have cleaned the register. I need to be able to believe the national institutions when they come and tell us this. Now they are saying that the register may be populated by persons who have the ID card. They should prove that. All right? The chairperson and her commissioners need to bring evidence currently that there are those people on the register. It is not sufficient.
But Ms. Aine, I have a question. I have a question for you. You believe the EC when it told the court that they've cleaned the register. You thought their word was adequate. That same Electoral Commission now tells you, well, we don't think that was adequate enough, but you doubt that. Why?
Yeah, but Evans, you see, there's a difference here. When the Electoral Commission in 2016 went before the Supreme Court and said, Your Lordships, we have cleaned the register, they presented evidence. They presented the Form 8, containing the 56,000 names. Okay, and the court was satisfied before it made orders. This Electoral Commission is telling Ghanaians that they think that there are still names of those persons on the register. They should provide the proof. All right. Otherwise, that mere assertion should. I would not, being a trained lawyer, I won't believe just a bare assertion, of a fact. It has to be backed by evidence. And I'm not seeing that evidence as we speak. And even there is a case filed by my party, and of course, the writ was issued from my chambers. So I do know very much what is going on in that case. All right. I don't think that you have seen in the arguments that were filed by the Electoral Commission an affidavit attached showing that they have found these names, because the Electoral Commission cannot just come and tell us that, oh, you know what, we think that these names may exist, all right, and so we are going to do a new register. And that is why I think that your question about whether this is going to would be a cure for a defective register, I think that is a very poignant question. It is a question that I would say all Ghanaians should be pondering over. Because let me tell you one thing, there is never a perfect register. There is never one on this planet Earth. Okay? The register tomorrow will contain dead people. The register tomorrow will contain minors. The register tomorrow may contain people who have fraudulently gotten onto it. Does it mean that we should throw it away, throwing the baby away with the bathwater? Is that what we should be doing as a country? All right? But you see, you were asking about what we, the minority, will do.
Yes, that's a big next question, which is, have you thrown in the towel?
No, we haven't. And we will never throw in the towel. All right? And I'll tell you why. We are in court now, and we believe in the independence of the judiciary. We believe that the judges We'll look at the law, the legal arguments on their merits, okay? And whether we lose or win, we'll abide by the results, I mean, of the Supreme Court litigation, okay? So that is one battlefront, which is not yet over. So, and we are investing our faith in the judges to do the right thing.
But on that legal front, quick question: the EC's timeline is already fixed now. Are you going to get a judgment in time before that starts, or you are contemplating filing an injunction? What is the legal strategy here?
No, we would not. You know, I mean, at this stage, want to file an injunction. I suspect the judges are minded to give an expeditious decision, you know, in order to clear everybody's mind about what is feasible, you know, because part of our argument in court is that the power to compile means that under under the law, Article 45 of the Constitution, when you compile, you can only revise the register, but you cannot do a new register. Because to compile and revise means that there must be an existing register for you to revise. And so the register can be revised from time to time, but it cannot be thrown away and then a new one compiled, so that at any point in time that an electoral commissioner feels that they need a new register, or there's a political push for a new register, they throw this one away and waste our money on a new one. We are making that argument, I mean, strongly in court. Okay. You know, but, you know, failing that, we also think the court should allow for the use of the existing, you know, voter ID cards in order to speed up the registration, you know, of voters, especially in the, you know, rural areas, because of the fact that this might lead to some, I mean, vouching might lead to a lot of bureaucratic delays, and we are not in normal times in this country.
Let me bring in Mr. Barbie Asamoah. Mr. Barbie Asamoah, so clearly the next phase of the battle from the minority is to challenge this matter in court. Something that you embrace, and of course you trust in the courts to fairly adjudicate this matter, and I'm pretty sure that your weight is firmly behind what you're doing in court.
The beauty of democracy and growing this particular democracy is the faith we have in our courts, because that ought to be the final habitat. That should end everything. Beyond that is violence, which we cannot condone as a nation. But quickly, this presumption of pessimism on the part of my chairman is a bit difficult about the NIA. I'm not advocating a mop-up, but I'm saying that clearly there's opportunity to distribute the cards that have been printed. It's a duty on the part of the NIA that in the event they are able to distribute the cards, or if not, and you have a target of 14, 15 million people, then 7 million is half the people already. That's the cards that have already been distributed. The other half, if the last registration exercise took 95% in vouching, then the other half are far less than 95% of the population who will be registering, therefore could go through vouching. I appreciate that it's being said that vouching is bureaucratic and otherwise, and the rural folk, they keep mentioning rural folk. But how did the rural folk come by their old ID cards in the first place? There was a process. There was a basic original process, and that original process, I dare say, included vouching on several levels. Now let's come to the assumption, mere assumption, that there are NHIA people who use NHIA cards to acquire voter ID cards out there. It's not a mere assumption. There are living, breathing individuals who went there and delivered. And so it is incumbent on the EC to deliver what the Supreme Court has asked for, a legal basis for their assertion that they were unable to complete the cleaning exercise.
But the thing says nobody has provided any evidence to show that there are people still on the register with NHIS cards.
That's what I'm saying, that right from the beginning, let's be fair to the parties to the suit and the Supreme Court. The EC and the AG apparently in the first instance didn't come in to engage on the merits of the suit. They came in more or less conditionally, because I bet the AG even thought that the instrument was not ripe and could not be challenged. So now they are being asked to file arguments which more or less deal with the substance of the matter. And both sides are being asked to do that. So in doing that, I believe we will see the administrative evidence, which is based on law, because they have a mandate to deliver. The EC is not working in vacuum.
Well, the EC, they filed their defense already, and Dr. Andy says they still didn't produce the evidence that there are people still on the register with the NHIS cards.
They've been asked. They've been ordered by the Supreme Court to provide further arguments outlining the legal basis for their refusal of the...
Yeah, and they have done that. They have filed that.
That's what
they've obeyed the court's order, and in that document they submitted, they still didn't provide the evidence.
Very well. So let's see what happens with the court, because I've been out of Accra. I haven't noticed that. Maybe Dr. Ine is to the street and therefore receives the documents. My chairman, who is dealing with the CI, is the same man who is challenging the CI in court.
Yeah.
So let's be fair to ourselves. I think the route of going to the Supreme Court and engaging the Supreme Court as a final arbiter is the best development process for our democracy.
Okay.
But as to the validity of the argument that there is only one register could be very doubtful, because compile under Article 45 doesn't mean that you compile once and revise forever. Otherwise, we couldn't have arrived where we are, where we had an initial register where you were just being looked at in the face and registered because it was believed you were who you said you were, and that you were the age you said you were, and that you were of sound mind. And we progressed to the point where, in pictures, we progressed to the point where we've had biometric information, and now we want to add face recognition.
Yeah.
So, those improvements, one can say on two levels, that yes, if you use the old card, then you are just moving the register forward. You have a traveling register, more or less. But one can also say that to the extent that anytime you go, you still have to prove your identity with whatever document you have. It's a compilation of new register.
Well, gentlemen,
I think that where we are now, the NDC must be fair to the people of the country and let the EC do its work. Well,
gentlemen, I'm grateful that you joined me. We'll see how this plays out at the Supreme Court. Enjoy the rest of your evening. All the best. Yabamia Samoa in your context in the primaries next week, Saturday. And for Dominic Ayine, all the best in that case before the Supreme Court. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Bye.